This is my 164th video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge, and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part will continue my progress with my Hornby Dublo 3-rail tabletop railway, still in its fairly early stages. This time I'll be going forward a bit with my 3-rail track work, moving on from the simple oval that came with the Duchess of Atholl train set towards something a bit more ambitious in the way of a track plan, albeit still within the limits of the little tabletop that I've set up for my Dublo railway. This is what I started with, a Hornby Dublo 3-rail Duchess of Atholl train set from somewhere around 1950. See part 161 for my initial setup and testing of this set. This set came with some track, but the bare basics, just standard Dublo 3-rail curves and straights with a power feed track. Here's the track from the train set taken out of the box. 8 curves, enough to make a circle of track, and just 2 straights, one of them the power feed track. And here's that track set up, making a simple oval. The curves are the original Dublo standard radius, the only radius that was made in 3-rail track initially, although later a large radius was added. The original standard radius was 15 inches to the centre of the track, making a circle about 31.5 inches across to the outside of the track. So that is what this oval measures from front to back. The tabletop that I've set up for my Dublo 3-rail work is just 6 foot by 3 foot 4 inches. Before I went on with expanding my track work, I wanted to diagnose and, if possible, fix the problems that I was having with my initial oval. As you'll know if you've watched any of my previous videos on Dublo 3-rail, my locos were showing a marked tendency to slow down round the back of the oval, especially at the back left where the curves join the straight. I sort of assumed this must be because somehow the power wasn't getting to the locos properly at that point in the oval. So I got out my multimeter to try to determine the source of the problem by measuring resistance, voltage, etc. And the results of this exercise surprised me, as they didn't show at all what I was expecting. Okay. Stage 1 clarification of track issues. If you've seen any of my previous videos, the previous 2 or 3 videos I've made on my little 3-rail tabletop, you'll have noticed that the engines kept slowing down round the back there. Actually, I'm going to stop the engine now because the noise of the engine is probably meaning that you can't very well hear what I'm saying. The problem was that the engine would always slow down round the back there. And I assumed this was because of poor continuity in the track, that the voltage just wasn't, the power is being fed in round here on the front. It's not very far, but I just assumed that, the voltage wasn't quite getting round to there. But I got my multimeter out and checked things out. First thing I checked out was for resistance in the joins between the track. I'd put the multimeter one side and another of a join and see how much resistance. My multimeter said effectively there was basically no resistance on any of the joints. So then I checked the voltage. Now that's sort of interesting in itself. At its maximum, the Duet controller down there is supplying about 13.67, 13.68 volts. So a little over 12, which doesn't surprise me greatly. But the interesting thing is, if I measure the voltage there where I'm putting it in, I get 13.68. If I measure it there where the trains were slowing down, I get 13.68. So it didn't appear there was actually any voltage drop, measurably. So this is a bit confusing. I think the answer quite clearly is the problem was, the reason the engines were slowing down was not because of voltage drop. It was because the track wasn't level. The problem is, I just have trouble getting the tabletop perfectly level in the middle because it's a folding table. and there's a fold, well, you can't really see the fold now, but there's a fold in the middle, so when I lay the foam over the top, there's a slight ridge in the middle of the table, and the track there, right where that loco was, those two pieces of track just weren't lying level. They're lying a bit more level now because I pulled them, because the unevenness is worse at the back of the table for some reason. But see, there's a slight ridge there, and that's what was causing the problem, not voltage drop. It was that slight ridge in the track. So I guess the loco's contacts just weren't contacting the rails so well because it was passing over a ridge in the track. So that was what was causing the slowdown. Not a voltage drop, not resistance, not a need for more track contact cleaning, but a need to get the track to lay flatter. So I don't know where that's going to take us in the future. It's going to be a little hard. I've done my best, but it's going to be a little hard to make this table really, really, really flat, because it is a folding table. There is that sort of slight ridge in the middle. Anyway, I think more or less now, where are we? Trying to get it started about as slowly as it will go. Can I get it going slower than that? Yes, should be able to. Trying to get the engine to go around about as slowly as I can now. And I think it will go over the back there without slowing down now, because I've managed to get the track to lay down a bit flatter, mainly by bringing it away from the edge of the table, because the ridge seems to be worse at the edge of the table. But I'm going to expand the layout, and I'm going to want to put a track right along the back of the table, almost touching the back of the table, I think, with my ultimate layout. So it may be a bit of a problem to get that track to lay flat enough. We'll see what we can do. But anyway, that's the lesson learned so far, is that the problem is not the problem we were having before anyway. Trying to see how slow I can get this engine to go and keep going. The problem was not voltage drop, as I thought. I assumed it was voltage drop, but it was not voltage drop. The problem was track not laying flat enough. Anyway, my next step's going to be, I've got a whole box full of other track. We'll get that out, we'll have a look at it, and then I'm going to do a bunch of cleaning of that before I attempt to put it down, and then we'll see what we can do about making a bit more of a layout. There we go.
Having diagnosed and fixed that problem as best as I could, I moved on to looking at adding more track work. This is the lot of track that I bought on eBay for my expansion. I didn't get to choose the exact mix, I just bought this because it was the mixed lot of track that seemed to offer the best value and to offer enough to provide some serious options. This lot came with 5 sets of isolating points, 3 right and 2 left. These isolating points were an important element for me, as they're very useful for making up a track plan that allows multiple trains to be on the layout at the same time, since areas of the track can be isolated from the power just by changing the points without the need for extra external switches. Here you can see how those isolating points are wired on the back. Pretty simple really, as the point rails are moved from side to side by operating the lever that also moves an electrical contact from side to side, causing power to be passed from the incoming centre rail to either the straight or the turning centre rail, depending how the point is set. I also got 3 standard, i.e. non-isolating points, 2 right and 1 left. Here's the back of one of those points. As you can see, there's no electrical switch here, and the incoming centre rail is just permanently connected to both the straight and turning centre rails. So power will be passed in all directions at all times, regardless of how the point is set to direct the train. I also got with this lot a substantial number of standard curves and standard straights. The blue box at the back is also full of standard straights.
There were a number of half-straights and half-curves. The half-curves are required with points if you want to turn the branching line back to be parallel with the incoming line. There were 2 of these manually operated uncoupling tracks, which are half-straight in length. These work by turning the lever to raise the piece in the middle to push the simplex coupling up. There were also 2 of these half-straights with raised portions beside the centre rail. I think those are for use with level crossings. And there were 2 quarter-straights. I rather wish there'd been more of those, as short straights are useful for making up specific lengths without the need to cut track. There were no 1/8 straights, which is a bit of a problem, as some track plan ideas I'm interested in require 1/8 straights. There were also a couple of diamond crossings. At the moment, I don't believe that I'll be using these. These screws didn't come with a lot of track that I bought on eBay. I bought these separately from Amazon, as I found that the smallest screws that I had on hand wouldn't fit through the holes in the 3-rail track bases. These 2mm screws will fit through the holes in the track base, and their countersunk heads won't go through the holes. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to use these screws to fasten down my track, although I don't know how well they will hold in the foam matting that I'm using to cover my tabletop surface. I looked at a number of suggestions for Dublo 3-rail layouts. I downloaded the PDF of this Hornby booklet from Charles Cooper's Railway Pages. You can see the nature of this pamphlet described there on the title page. This is the cover of another booklet that Hornby published of Dublo track plans. I didn't find a copy of this booklet as such, but I was able to find pictures of the track plans from it on the New Railway Modelers Forum. Here are a number of track plans from those 2 booklets that would fit on my 6-foot by 3-foot 4-inch tabletop. The black plans are from the first booklet, and the brown ones from the New Railway Modelers Forum, originally from the second booklet. There are lots of other plans in those books, but only these were really applicable for me, as the others were either very simple or too large and complex to fit on my tabletop. This is Plan 6 from the brown booklet. This one seemed very suitable to me. Although various isolation points are indicated in this plan, the little circles with IT and the quarter straight with the dots beside it, those isolations should not actually be essential to operating this plan with 3-rail, because the nature of 3-rail, with one polarity of the power always being passed through the centre rail and the other polarity through both outer rails, with that, a 3-rail layout can have a reversing loop like this without causing a short circuit, even with no isolations. Whereas, of course, with modern 2-rail track, since the reversing loop connects the right rail on one side to the left rail on the other side, it will cause a short circuit unless isolations are used. And those isolations will need to be switched as a train moves across the reversing loop. But this isn't necessary with 3-rail, so it's actually much easier to have a reversing loop with 3-rail. This is layout M from the black booklet. I particularly like the idea here of having a loop with 2 separate back sections switchable by points at the ends of the first set of curves. As given in the pamphlet, layout M was too big for my tabletop, requiring 6 foot 3 inches by 4 foot. But the basic idea could be used on my tabletop by eliminating the intermediate siding, bringing the 2 back loop sections closer together and shortening the length a bit. So I came up with this plan, combining the ideas of Plan 6 from the brown booklet and Plan M from the black booklet. This plan has the 2 back sections to the loop from Plan M, switchable by isolating points on either side. Then the reversing loop and interior branches from Plan 6 are incorporated inside the lower part of the loop. I believe that it should be possible to essentially set up this plan on my tabletop, although there will be a couple of issues.
One issue that I ran into when I got my additional lot of track was that I had 3 right-hand isolating points and 2 left-hand, whilst the plan as originally drawn required 3 left and 2 right. This issue could be addressed by simply flipping the plan horizontally, so that all of the left-hand points became right-hand and vice versa, as seen here. Another problem that was somewhat trickier to address was that this plan required 3 1/8 straights, circled in red here. Those 1/8 straights are essential to the geometry of this plan. They can't really be eliminated, as they're needed to get the ends of the reversing loop to line up properly and fit into the straight sides of the loop. So if I'm going to set up this plan, I will need to address this somehow. 3-rail 1/8 straights aren't that easy to find. I couldn't find any for sale in North America. I did find them to buy on eBay UK, but they were going to cost me about $25 each with the shipping, and paying $75 for 3 little pieces of track just over 1 inch in length seemed a bit ridiculous. The only alternative will be to cut pieces of track of custom length from the straights that I have. I do have more than enough spare straights to do this, and this isn't an unheard of idea with 3-rail. Ronald Dodds gives some basic instructions for doing this in his videos. So I think that's what I'm going to do, although it feels a bit like vandalism carving up sections of 3-rail track that have managed to survive for over half a century. Initially, I decided to start by just setting up the outer loops without getting into the inner branches and the reversing loop. For this initial setup, I don't need to bother with the 1/8 straight requirement. I'll just make the straights 3 full straight pieces in length to start with. So I've marked here in blue what will be needed to create this longer loop with 2 back sections. Now, since the Duchess of Atholl train set came with 8 full curves and 2 full straights, and I've already got those cleaned and set up, to build this next stage I will just need 2 more full curves, 7 more full straights, 2 half curves, and 1 isolating left-hand point and 1 isolating right-hand point. Having determined that, I got the necessary additional pieces onto my bench for preparation, as seen here. 7 full straights at the front, 2 full curves at the back, and in between 2 half curves and 1 left and 1 right isolating point. Here's the rest of the track I have after taking out those pieces. Lots more. More than I'll be able to use on my little tabletop, although I will be using almost all of the points eventually, I hope. This additional track required quite a bit of work. Many of the fish plates were in pretty bad shape, as seen here. I did my best to squash the fish plates back into usable state using needle nose pliers, a bit tricky to do. Some of the fish plates were beyond repair, like this one, which has its sides completely broken off. I had some Atlas fish plates for modern Code 100 track on hand. I wasn't really sure how well these would work with 3-rail track. Actually, they seemed to work fine. They fitted quite nicely and tightly onto the rails, but not so tightly that it was impossible to get them on. And they even had little tails on their ends that could be bent into the grooves in the base of the 3-rail track, holding the fish plate in place. So it appears that if necessary, replacing fish plates shouldn't be a problem. Here's another one of the original fish plates in a very mangled state. I believe that I replaced this one. After going through all of the fish plates, either bending them back into hopefully usable shape or replacing them, I cleaned the rails using ultrafine 600 grit emery paper on a wood block. This made quite a mess, as you can see on my fingers here. The points were particularly tricky to clean up, and I paid special attention to them, trying to get a good surface on all of the electrically significant rails. Next, I checked all of the track sections with my multimeter to make sure that there was continuity where it was supposed to be, and especially no continuity between the centre rails and the rest of the sections. I also did my best to ensure that all of the sections would lie flat, gently bending them by hand where they seemed to be rocky. Finally, I gave the ends of all the sections, the fish plates and the connecting tabs, a spray with electrical contact cleaner. I also used the contact cleaner on the switching contacts of the points. I took my additional sections over to the tabletop and started to fit them into the loop. I ran into some problems. In some cases, additional work was required on the fish plates to get the sections to actually join up properly. And with some of the straight sections, the rails didn't line up properly at the ends of the section. To fix this, back on the bench, I put the end of the section on a wood block and then used a punch and a small hammer to tap the other end of the rail that was out of alignment to bring it back to the correct position. This would have been more tricky to do with curves, but fortunately I didn't have this problem with any of my curved sections. I got the full outer loop joined up and was pleased to see that it fitted on my tabletop with a little to spare. The points were particularly hard to connect properly as they're more complex and it's hard to even see some of the rails at the ends well as they're sort of underneath things. Finally, I added the inner section of the loop with the half curves connecting to the isolating points at either end. And I turned on the power to the Duet controller and tried the 264 tank on the newly expanded track. Frankly, I was kind of shocked to find that it actually worked on all of the track at the first attempt.
Well, I'm moderately impressed in that I've actually managed to get this loco. This is the tank loco I was trying because it's just easier to work with because I don't have to worry about a tender and things. I mean, I could run the Duchess without a tender, but it doesn't look right running without a tender, does it? So I was running this guy, and I actually got him to run. I've actually run him, and I got him to run round this newly assembled loop with two branches, both ways, without stopping or derailing. Which, considering what a struggle I found putting the track together, was kind of better than I expected. Of course, it may well prove me a liar now, and when I try and demonstrate it failed to work, but I'm impressed that it worked even once. The biggest problem was definitely the points. They're hard to couple up. They're the hardest thing to couple up. They're a real struggle to couple up. I mean, for one thing, you know, at the end of the point, there you can't even see the track because it's sort of buried underneath a piece, so trying to couple the fish plates up to it is very tricky because you can't see it, and just generally, and when I first coupled this point up I didn't have that fish plate coupled up correctly. I thought I did, but I didn't. It's getting everything coupled up with the tabs underneath and both fish plates join is a bit of a struggle. I mean, I did spend quite a bit of work trying to get the fish plates into better shape before I even tried to join up the track and replacing a few of them, but anyway, let me see if I can get this working now. I've got the points to go straight now, so going around the outer loop. Because I've got to bend down here, that's the controller. So that's about 75% power or something. Of course, if you set that point wrong, it would just derail the loco. Actually, Hornby suggested putting an isolator track in front of it, in which case it wouldn't, the loco would stop before it hit the point, and that would be a useful safety feature, I suppose. Let me just show you what I mean. See if I can stop him there. See, if I had an isolator, say there, or even there, if I had an isolator there, then if that point was set to turn, because it's a switching point, no power would be passed there. So if I had an isolator at the end of the straight there, or even just you don't even need to use an isolator, you can just put a tab underneath. You can just put an isolating tab underneath the connector so the tab doesn't touch. Then as soon as the loco runs onto this rail, if the point's set the other way, it'll stop, which will stop it hitting the rail, the point set the wrong way and derailing, which is a nice safety feature. I mean, it's not essential, you know. You don't, it's not something, even on modern railways, that we generally do very much. We don't really have point protection usually like that. But it would be a nice feature, and Hornby in their booklet on setting up layouts do suggest that. I kind of wondered why they had so many isolators in when I looked at their designs, but most of the isolators they have in are not. He still makes rather a block clonk as he goes over the points. Whether we're going to get rolling stock to go across the points, I don't know. Not very happy with the noise he makes going over the point there. Is that point joined properly? So far as I can see, it is joined essentially properly. I mean, none of the fish plates appear to be out of place that I can see. But he certainly makes rather a clonk going over that point, which is a little worrying. While we're at this point, let's change it. Now, this is an isolating point, so we've set it... Oh, in fact, maybe we'll illustrate that first. Okay. Let's just take him round to the back. If we put him round on the back, and then we set both of these points to isolating, to turning, because they're isolating points, when they're both set to turn, see, that's now set to turn, and so is the other one. So now, if I turn the power up, well, you can't see, but I am honestly, I just turned the power up to full power, and the loco doesn't move, and of course that's as it should be, because no power is passed there, because they're switching points. Okay, so let's switch the points back straight for a minute. Bring the loco back to the front section of the mini layout we've got here. And then we'll set the points to turn again with the idea that we can then hopefully run him round the inner line. I'm going to keep him running fairly slowly because, well, even in real life, trains run slowly over points generally. So there he is. See, he's turning on the points and going around the inner loop, and he may be slowing down a little bit, but not too bad. Okay, and of course we can do the opposite. We can park a train here. If we put him there and set that point straight and set that point straight, then when we turn the power up, nothing happens. He doesn't move, and of course then you could run you could run another loco. You could run. I don't think I'm going to try and run the Duchess right now, but because he's parked, you could have one train parked there and run another train on the other line. Now I'm putting the points back to turn, because if either point is set to turn, power will go there, because it'll go from one end or the other. And we'll turn the power up again, and off he goes. Well, I'm impressed. I'm pleased, I have to say. Quite frankly, this initial... I'm tripping over shoes and things here. There really is too much clutter, but, you know, the initial testing of this mini layout went better than I expected, given all the trouble I had trying to, you know, sort out the fish plates and couple the track up. I honestly didn't expect a train to run round first try without any stops. And you know, I'm not saying we're out of the woods. I mean, you know, the track is not 100% flat. Nothing's screwed down yet. I don't want to screw anything down yet. The track is definitely not 100% flat. I can see a bit of a bump there, and bumps are not good. Some of that might go away a bit if I screw the track down, but not 100%, because the foam itself isn't 100% level. But I'm not going to screw anything down yet, because this is by no means, this is part of my final intended design. I want to put a bunch more stuff in that middle area there, ultimately. But that's going to require some more fiddling around. In fact, to get to where I ultimately want to go, I'm going to have to cut some custom pieces of track, which I'm not looking forward to. But anyway, there you go. Number one very basic test of the slightly expanded Stage 1 layout actually worked.